Welcome to Kazam. In this video, I'm going to show you how to get started with the Kazam software. So first, after you've signed in to your account here and you've connected your Amazon Seller Central account or accounts, you can toggle between them by clicking this up here, and you'll see a drop down which will show your different marketplaces such as Amazon US and Amazon Canada. Currently, Kazam is compatible with Amazon US and Amazon Canada, and you can toggle between those there. If you have other Seller Central accounts, you'll see those in the drop down as well. One key thing to note is that you can only have one Kazam user profile connected to a Seller Central account. So if you create a different Kazam profile, you do not want to connect it to the exact same Amazon Seller Central account. Otherwise, it will create a conflict when you're trying to migrate or create campaigns. So make sure that whatever Seller Central accounts you add to your profile, don't try to add those to a different user profile. That being said, on your home icon here, it brings you to this dashboard. We're going to talk about quick launch first. So if you go here, you'll see these are all the campaigns that Kazam will create. And we'll talk in a minute about how it creates those campaigns, but this is where they will show up. It will also show up in your Amazon advertising dashboard under a new portfolio that will be called Quick Launch. So if you go to your Amazon advertising dashboard and you go to portfolios, you'll see a new portfolio there called Quick Launch, and it will show all these campaigns there as well. I highly recommend monitoring these budgets, especially in Amazon Seller Central in the advertising dashboard. Monitor those budgets, and if you start to run out of budget, I would recommend to increase those budgets on those campaigns that are performing well, so that you don't run out. I'll show you in a minute here when you're setting up your SKUs and you're setting up the bid guardrails. It is going to ask you for a daily budget, but that daily budget becomes spread across multiple campaigns. So it is important to monitor that. That's pretty much the only thing that you'll really want to have your hands on, is just the budget part of it. Kazam will really manage everything else, but the only thing I highly recommend is really making sure that you monitor those budgets and that they don't run out. That being said, you can also click on the individual campaign, and you'll have a little more visibility into some of the performance of the campaign there, such as the keywords that it's targeting. A lot of the campaigns will be targeting individual keywords, and it shows you the match type. By default, it's going to have this toggled on here, which is the organic search ranking. What this means is that by default, Kazam is going to optimize bids and reduce bids for keywords you start to rank highly for. So if you start to rank at the top of page one organically, for your target ASIN or for your target SKU for this specific keyword, then Kazam will monitor that and will start to reduce those bids. If you don't want it to do that, you would toggle this off. So what would happen is if you toggle this off, then Kazam will not reduce the bids if you're ranking highly organically. It won't take that part of it into account. It will optimize bids based on other factors to achieve your profitability goals. But with regard to showing up in basically multiple places, such as the organic position as well as the sponsored placement, you will show up in both placements if it's toggled off. If you want to really minimize how much you're spending on Amazon fees, and you want to avoid the redundancy of showing up organically as well as showing up for the sponsored result at the top of the page for that keyword, and you feel that you're going to get those sales anyway just from the organic search for the organic ranking, then you can just leave this on, and Kazam will handle that for you. And I recommend in most cases leaving that on, unless you really just want to show up in multiple places, and you just want the brand awareness and such. You can also adjust the bid adjustment for placements. You don't have to do this, but if you find that you want to increase the top of search for a certain keyword, for a certain ASIN, you can do that here, and this will basically adjust where the ad shows up primarily for. Then we'll go back here. If you go back to this quick launch dashboard here, you're going to want to go to add/edit advertise SKUs. And this is going to show me the SKUs that I've added, and the ones that are actually actively advertising and the ones that Kazam is not yet advertising for, or basically creating ads for. When you first go here, this is going to be blank. You're going to want to click add, and it'll show you all your SKUs. Everything in Kazam is optimized at the SKU level, for both the quick launch and the migrated campaigns, which we'll talk about in a minute. But basically, you scroll down here, you find what SKU that you want to add, And then the only things you need to set are your bid guardrails and your max budget. And so you'll set those here, say add. Once you say add, it's then going to show up here in this SKU dashboard. And then you can click here, for example, and it'll show you here, this is not yet enabled. So it says not advertised. What you need to do is you need to make sure that you set these bid guardrails and max budget, but you also need to set a couple other required parameters, which is your target ROAS, your return on ad spend that you want to get, as well as your target ACOS. You want to add those there, update those. Your ROAS and your ACOS are going to be basically the same thing. They're almost inverse of each other, but you want to make sure to set those because that will be very helpful for Kazam when it optimizes. And then once you've set that and that's done, you want to click advertise, and it will then this will turn green and say advertised. Let me go back here. This is what it will look like when it's advertised. It's now enabled. And then what I recommend from there, these are all optional fields, but what I'm finding more and more is that many users will see much better results right out of the gates, or at least much more quickly with regard to ACOS optimization and profitability if you add in as much data in these first few fields, mainly the ASIN targets and keywords that you can. So for example, if you've already done a lot of keyword research, or if you have some good information about your particular SKU and you know what keywords are most relevant or ASINs are most relevant, I highly recommend adding those here because that will feed some initial data to Kazam to be able to optimize more efficiently out of the gates. Otherwise, sometimes what can happen is that the ACOS might be very high in the beginning and it might take 30 or 60 days for it to really start to figure out if it doesn't know enough about your product or the relevancy. It will take some time for it to figure that out on its own. So the more that you can feed it initially, it'll help speed up that process. So I highly recommend that here. And this is what it will look like here. So if I go, for example, brand name, you can add the brand name here, and the system will create branded campaigns for you. You can add competitors here. So you would type in your competitors' brand names, and it'll create campaigns targeting those competitors' brand names as well. The key one thing I do want to mention is that you do have to make sure the SKU is enabled to access those. So right now, looking at this SKU example, it's not yet enabled yet because I haven't clicked advertise, so it's still not enabled. And because of that, I can update the brand name, but I cannot update competitors or ASIN targets. Competitors actually you can't add, but ASIN targets and keywords, there's no ability to add them yet. I have to first enable this to be able to access those. So if I go back here and I go to this example, this one is advertised, it's enabled. And so if I go to ASIN targets, I can add an ASIN target. And it will give me recommendations of ASINs to target. And you can target your own ASINs, you can target competitor ASINs, and this will just basically be, a product attributed target campaigns where Kazam's creating sponsored products campaigns that are targeting certain ASINs. So this will give you some recommended ASINs that you can select. You can also search your own or load more, and it will show a larger list. Same thing with keywords. You can say add keyword, and it'll show recommended, or you can search keywords or add custom keywords, and it'll show you the search volume and uh, relevance and competition and such. But I highly recommend, especially the keywords. Most likely you already have some information since you did some keyword research to create your listing. So I think that if you can add that information here, it would be really, really helpful to your campaign performance. Again, you can modify some of the information here. So if you want to set certain bid targets, you can set certain bid targets for keywords. This is the organic search ranking that I was talking about before. If it's turned on, which it is now by default, it is turned on. That means that Kazam is going to reduce bids as you start to rank at the top of the page organically for that keyword. So that way your sponsored listing will most likely not show up over time, but your organic listing will. And the good thing about that is that with the organic listing, you're only paying Amazon referral fees. You're not paying PPC costs. But if you want that turned off, again, you can turn that off here as well as in the quick launch dashboard that I showed you under that specific campaign, you can turn it off. But that would only be if you wanted to show up in both placements. Boost keywords. This is another optional tool. This is it more so if you're trying to aggressively rank for certain keywords. So let's say you're doing a ranking campaign and you're doing several different things with advertising campaigns inside and outside of Amazon in an effort to boost your Amazon SEO. What you could do with this is you could turn certain keywords on to boost them, and what would happen is Kazam is going to increase the bids, um, and it's going to do that over a 5-day period. And basically, it's going to reduce those bids back down at the end of those 5 days, or whenever you reach top 10 rankings, whichever comes first. So this could be a useful tool. Obviously, it's not going to be as profitable ACoS wise because it's going to be increasing those bids rapidly, and you can set a max bid here as well, so to make sure you don't go too high. But this can be a good tool to just be more aggressive towards certain keywords that you want to rank highly for. Um, Target bid expansion. So the next few things I'm going to talk about here, this is if you really want to get more granular, or if you're finding that maybe Kazam isn't optimizing the way that you want it to, you can actually supersede the rule sets and the way that Kazam optimizes. You can supersede that with your own specific rules with frequency of optimization. So for example, this particular one is about customizing bid expansion for target bids. So for keywords or ASIN targets, you can go here and you can say, okay, I want to do a daily optimization. I want to increase the bid by, let's say, a percentage or a dollar amount. And you'd say, okay, I want to increase it by 20%. I want to set a max bid of $5. And I want to target anything that has less than 100 impressions. And I want to target anything that has less than 100 impressions over the last look back period 7 days or 14 days, 30, and so forth. Or you can even do a custom look back period. And what Kazam will do is it'll basically override what it was already doing in terms of frequency and optimizations, and it will follow this frequency and optimizations with regard to this function for targeting and increasing bids on low impression targets. And then you would just apply those changes. And then search term expansion, similar thing. This is for basically it's going to automatically pull top converting search terms from other campaigns and it's going to pull them into a new campaign. So Kazam already does this, but again, if you said, hey, you know what, I need this more frequently, I want to do daily, I want to look back period to be the last 7 days or the last 30 days. I want you to find any search terms with a ROAS between, you know, 3 and 4 or 4 and 6. You put that here. Find search terms that meet the following criteria, at least 5 orders, or click-through rate percentage higher than X percent, conversion rate higher than X percent. You'd put that there. Uh, there's a toggle here. It'll you can, I usually recommend leaving this on, but by default, automatically, it's going to add that search term as a negative in the original campaign. So if we find a winning search term from one campaign and we create a new campaign to target that search term, generally you want to add it as a negative in that original campaign so you don't have two campaigns targeting the exact same search term or keyword. So that's an option there. You can turn that off if you want, but this is an automated default. You can also set your match type preference and bid for those new keywords. So for those search terms, you can set a broad phrase and exact bid price, and then you can apply. Same thing with negative optimization. So this has to do with negative search terms and ASINs that meet certain criteria. So you would say, okay, daily, for example, look back period 30 days, basically any keywords with, let's say, 30 clicks and no sales, or let's say, 5,000 impressions without any clicks, or click-through rate percentage lower than, 1% or something. You can apply those changes and it will negative out those keywords if you wanted it to for meeting those parameters. And then the last one here is day parting and seasonality. So you have the ability to turn ads off during a certain time of day. And you can select what time of day and what days of the week you want to do that. You can do it during certain times of the year if you want to turn them off. And you can also adjust your budget during certain times of the year. So you can say increase your daily budget during, let's say, Q4. You could set that here. So again, like I said, these last few that I talked about, the target bid expansion all the way through the day parting and seasonality, those are, if you want to get more granular, you have that capability. But the ones I highly, highly recommend are these first ones here at the top, primarily the ASIN targets and the keywords, and maybe even the competitor brand names. But certainly the ASIN targets and keywords can be really, really beneficial to making sure your campaigns have the highest chance for success, adding that initial information in. Once you click that advertise button, whether or not you add this information here or not, what ends up happening is basically Kazam's going to create a series of auto and manual campaigns targeting different keywords that it thinks are going to be most relevant. And obviously, if you add certain information here, it's going to target those specific ASINs or keywords that you fed it as well. But that's basically how it works. So if I go back here to the quick launch dashboard, you'll start to see campaigns being created pretty quickly, and you'll see these auto and manual campaigns showing up. And then on the bottom left here, you'll see a icon for analytics. And about every week or so, it takes about a week maybe in the beginning for it to start updating and seeing some results aggregate. But then you can, after that, you can start to set your date range and the state and the profiles that you want to look at if you have different accounts connected to your Kazam profile, and you can see all the stats showing up here. Obviously, you can see the same information in the Amazon advertising dashboard, but this is just if you wanted to look at it at a glance. And the last thing would be going here. If I go back to the home page, as well as this same icon here, these will both take you to your migrated campaign. So if I go to the home page and I click migrated campaigns, if I click learn more, it's going to take me to the same thing here, this icon here, which is migrated campaigns. And basically what this allows you to do is migrate your existing campaigns that you had running in your Amazon account. So let's say you had a series of really good campaigns that you wanted to bring over to Kazam, and you want to have Kazam take over. Maybe somebody else was managing those or you were managing them, and now you want Kazam to manage those as well. You can do that. You just have to say add, and then it will basically find those campaigns that were already in there. And then you can click migrate, and it will migrate those campaigns. A few things to note when you're migrating campaigns is that Kazam is set up to optimize at the SKU level. So any campaigns that you have that are advertising multiple SKUs, like if you're advertising multiple ASINs or SKUs, it's going to ask you to select one SKU to focus on once you migrate it, so it can optimize for that SKU primarily for that campaign. And then the other thing is that you want to make sure that none of the campaigns you migrate have zero SKUs that it's advertising. Because what happens is sometimes I've seen in the past where users will try to, usually by accident, they try to migrate a campaign that's not advertising any SKUs or has no SKUs or ASINs attached to it in terms of advertising. And then it creates an error in Kazam. So it'll have an issue trying to migrate those campaigns for you. So just be aware if you experience an error, most likely one of the campaigns you're trying to migrate has nothing associated with it. There's no SKU or ASIN attached to it. Um, so again, if you click that campaign here, it's going to show you those campaign stats, very similar to what I showed you before. You can adjust the bids, you can adjust the bid adjustment for placement. You can adjust the organic search ranking feature. You can turn certain ones on and off if you wanted to. You can adjust the budgets. All of that can be done from here, as well as, of course, within the Amazon advertising dashboard. And again, also the other thing to mention, like I said before, with the migrated campaigns, it's focusing on one SKU. So when you go back to your quick launch, everything is optimized based on the parameters you set here. So when I go back to the SKU here, so let's say I migrated some campaigns that are targeting this particular ASIN and SKU, then my migrated campaigns are going to be optimized based on this. It's going to be based on this information. So you have to make sure any campaigns you migrate over, you want to also make sure you go into your dashboard and you enable that particular SKU so that it can optimize for it as well. So you have to make sure to set these parameters. At a minimum, you have to put the required fields, which are the bid guardrails, the max budget, ROAS, ACoS, and such. You have to do those and then click advertise. And then now once that SKU is enabled, then Kazam will create the campaigns for it as well as manage your campaigns that have been migrated. And the last thing I want to mention is the chat feature. So you have the ability to chat with your own AI assistant, and it tells you here when you click here it tells you what it can do. So it'll basically say right here, you can basically ask it information about, or ask it to even execute anything related to the items listed here. So if you wanted to ask about the performance of certain campaigns or the performance of certain keywords, you could ask it about that information. You could also ask it to pause certain campaigns or enable campaigns or pause certain keywords or add certain negative matches and such. You can all of these things that are listed here, you can ask it to do for you. So it acts almost like your own personal media buyer, and it can do those things for you. Obviously, if you get stuck at any point, or if you have any questions or you experience any issues at all, you can reach out to us directly at info at gokazam.com. So thanks and enjoy Kazam, and let us know if there's anything we can do to help. Thank you.